Millionaire CEO marries an obese woman as a bet. But why did he start falling for her? Before we begin, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. And once the story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. He married her for $1 million bet. She already knew he'd destroyed her family. Everyone thought she was the pawn, but she was holding the entire board. And when she told him the truth, that his empire killed her father and their unborn child, the billionaire broke. This isn't a story about revenge. It's about what happens when a man loses everything and still chooses to love the woman he didn't see coming. Lucas Marshall had never lost a bet, not in poker, not in business, not even in love, if you could call what he did love. For him, people were investments, emotions, a liability. So, when his friend Jack raised his glass that night, eyes glinting with the cruelty of too much privilege, and said, "Bet you won't marry someone who doesn't fit your type. 6 months, $1 million. Lucas laughed, not because it was absurd, but because he already knew he would win. What he didn't know was that the woman Jack chose had already circled his name in red years ago, and that this wasn't just a bet for her, it was a reckoning. She arrived at their first meeting, Khloe Richards, wearing a navy blue dress that made no apologies for her curves. Her posture wasn't demure, it was defiant. She sat across from Lucas in that high-end restaurant like she was interviewing him. And then she said it before he could charm, manipulate, or even pretend. "I know about the bet, the 6 months, the 1 million. And yes, Lucas, I accept." He raised a brow, momentarily thrown. "You don't seem surprised," he said. "I'm not," she replied, "because I came here with my own reasons, and you'll learn them in time. But just so we're clear, I'm not yours. I'm the storm that's coming for you." That night, as the snow fell gently against his penthouse glass, Lucas stared at the contract they'd signed. To him, it was just another game, a new puzzle. But somewhere in the dark, Khloe Richards was already planning his undoing. Not for the money, not for the marriage, but for the father he'd destroyed, the baby she'd buried, and the life he never even knew he stole. If a man marries you for a bet, but ends up begging for your forgiveness, is it still a game? Or did you win something even greater? Chapter 1. The $1 Million Bride. Lucas Marshall had never been challenged by a woman before, not like this. He watched her walk into the restaurant, not with hesitation, but with the stillness of someone who had already won something he hadn't yet realized was at stake. Khloe Richards didn't scan the room. She didn't adjust her dress or look for approval. She simply walked up to his table, pulled out the chair across from him, and sat down. "Lucas Marshall," she said flatly. He smiled, standing to shake her hand. "And you must be Khloe Richards." Her handshake was firm, no fluttering lashes, no nervous giggles, just eyes that didn't blink. She sat down again, folded her napkin neatly, and looked him straight in the face. "Let's not pretend," she said. "I know why we're here. I know about the bet. I know the terms. 6 months of marriage. $1 million on the line." Lucas didn't flinch, but something in his chest shifted. "You don't waste time," he said, reaching for his glass of wine. "I don't have time to waste," she replied, "especially not on people like you." That caught him off guard. People like him. This wasn't how it usually went. He was used to charm, submission. Oh, oui. But this woman across from him, she wasn't impressed by his name, his suit, or the reservation he pulled strings to secure. "I have to admit," Lucas said with a cool smile, "you're not what I expected." "I know," she said. "I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to agree to your game." She sipped her water and leaned forward, her voice low but cutting. "But if you think you're the only one with a strategy, you're already losing." Lucas's brow arched. This was turning out to be far more interesting than he'd planned. "Then why agree at all?" he asked. Khloe tilted her head, her gaze unreadable. "Let's just say I have my reasons. You don't need to know them." Not yet. Their food came. They didn't touch it. Lucas studied her while she spoke carefully, intentionally, like someone who didn't waste syllables. She asked him nothing about his business. She didn't care about how much he made or how big his penthouse was. Her disinterest made him curious. Her calm made him uneasy. He leaned back, watching her. Most women would see this as an opportunity. "To marry a billionaire?" she asked, her tone sharp. "To be treated like a trophy in a penthouse I didn't earn? No, thank you." "You don't believe in comfort," he challenged. "I believe in respect. And comfort that comes at the cost of dignity is just another kind of prison." Lucas didn't have a comeback. She wiped her mouth with the linen napkin and set it gently down beside her plate. "So here's how this is going to work," she said. "We'll marry. We'll live under the same roof. I won't interfere with your life, and you won't interfere with mine. I'm not yours to mold. I'm not a project. 6 months. Lucas, not a day more. And after that," he asked. "I walk away," she said. Clean, unchanged. He was silent. This wasn't how this game was supposed to feel. She was supposed to chase, to adapt, to bend. Instead, she was laying out boundaries, rules. She didn't even want his money. Didn't flinch when he flexed his power. She stood first. He rose with her, instinctively. "Are you always this calculating?" he asked, unsure whether to be impressed or offended. Her gaze didn't waver. "Only when I'm dealing with dangerous men who think they're untouchable." She turned and walked out, not waiting for him to follow. He stood there, one hand in his pocket, the other still resting on the untouched wine glass. For the first time in a long time, Lucas Marshall felt something he didn't recognize. Not control, not desire, but unease. She knew something. She wasn't just here to play along. And when she said 6 months, it wasn't a time limit. It was a countdown. To what? He didn't know. But he would find out, even if it killed him. Chapter 2. 6 months, not a day more. The wedding was held in a marble courthouse that smelled of disinfectant and old ink. There were no flowers, no vows, just signatures and silence. Lucas stood in a tailored black suit, straight-backed and unmoved, as if he were closing a business deal instead of entering a marriage. Khloe wore a deep gray dress, no lace, no veil. Her only accessory was a silver watch, like she was already counting the time. They didn't kiss, they didn't even touch. That night, Lucas brought her to his penthouse, 74 floors above the city. The windows wrapped around them like cold glass arms. The furniture gleamed like it had never been used. Khloe stood by the window, staring out at the endless skyline. Lights blinked. Cars flowed like blood through arteries far below. But she didn't look impressed. 6 months? She said quietly. Not a day more. Lucas watched her reflection in the glass. You really planned to count it down. I already started, she replied. The first few days passed like ghosts. Lucas tried to do what he'd always done. Win people over with grand gestures. He bought her things, dresses, jewelry, sent a private chef to ask about her preferences. He arranged a surprise weekend trip to Paris. When he told her, she blinked once and said, I have laundry. It wasn't anger. It was indifference. That stung more. He tried flattery. 2 words that used to make women blush or bend. But Khloe didn't blink. She didn't fall for shine. And Lucas was starting to realize that power meant nothing to someone who didn't want what you offered. One night, he stood in the kitchen doorway, watching her clean up after dinner. She didn't ask for help. She moved like a woman who'd always done it on her own. You don't have to act like a housewife, he said. She looked at him, almost amused. I'm just a person who doesn't leave dirty dishes overnight. He crossed his arms. You know, most women would be happy living like this. She set down the dish towel and met his gaze squarely. I'm not most women. And this isn't happiness. It's just square footage. Lucas hated the way she said that. Like the walls he had built to protect himself were meaningless. Like his empire was just hollow air. So he changed his tactic. He tried control. First, he told her not to go to work. You don't need a paycheck anymore, he said with a smirk. You're Mrs. Lucas Marshall. I don't want to be someone's kept wife, she said. I already have my dignity. I don't need your money to buy it back. She still left for work at 7:30 the next morning. He had one of his assistants cancel her meetings. She rescheduled them. He blocked her emails. She delivered documents in person. Every move he made to box her in. She slipped through like water through cracks. The tension began to build like a coiled spring. They argued in clipped tones, passive, controlled, like two lawyers speaking through clenched teeth. One evening, he stood in the hallway, watching her tie her coat. I don't understand you, he said. Khloe didn't stop. That's not my job. Any other woman would be grateful. She paused at the door and turned to him. You think gratitude is the price of love, or obedience is a form of affection. What I want, Lucas, is respect. And the terrifying thing is, you've never had to give that to anyone, because money's always done the talking for you. She walked out. He didn't follow. The more she resisted, the more obsessed he became, but not in the way he expected. It wasn't just about winning the bet anymore. It was about understanding the woman who lived under his roof, slept in a separate room, and didn't fear him the way others did. He found himself watching her in the mornings, how she took her coffee black, no sugar, how she always tied her hair up before sitting to read, how she ignored the designer wardrobe he filled her closet with, and wore her worn-out jeans instead. And slowly, something dangerous began to stir in him. Not lust, not pride, but something gentler, something he didn't trust, curiosity, and beneath that maybe even admiration. One night, he found her on the balcony. The city lights bathed her face in soft gold. I can't figure you out, he said, voice low. She didn't look at him. Maybe you're not supposed to. He stepped closer, tension rising in his chest. Is this fun for you? Playing the part of the untouchable wife, holding the keys to my house, but refusing to open the door. Now she turned, eyes steady and sharp. No, Lucas, this isn't fun. This is survival, and you're not a puzzle to solve. You're a consequence I chose to endure. He wanted to argue. He wanted to take back control. But something about the way she said consequence pierced through his pride like a pin through silk. For the first time, he wondered, what if this wasn't a game to her? What if she was here not to marry him, but to teach him something he wasn't ready to learn? And worse, what if she already had? Lucas once believed 6 months would fly by, but now, every day with her felt like a mirror, and he wasn't sure he liked the man staring back. Chapter 3. She won't break. Lucas Marshall believed in strategy. He knew how to wear people down, whether in the boardroom or in bed. He believed everyone had a breaking point. You just had to find the right pressure. With Khloe, he had tried kindness, gifts, power, silence. Nothing cracked her. So he chose what he knew best, control. It began with her schedule. Khloe worked part-time at a small community nonprofit, a place that didn't care who her husband was, only that she showed up with purpose. It annoyed Lucas more than he expected. You don't need to work, he told her one morning, watching her zip up her worn black coat. People might think I can't support my wife. She looked over her shoulder. Calm, let them think. I'm not your ornament. Lucas. When she returned that evening, her meetings had been accidentally canceled. The next day, her ride was mysteriously delayed. Lucas claimed ignorance, but she knew. She didn't yell. She simply walked past him and made dinner as if nothing had happened. That night, Lucas poured himself a scotch, watching her from the kitchen threshold as she chopped vegetables. "I don't get you," he said finally. Most people would have walked out by now. Khloe didn't stop cutting. Most people haven't lost everything and survived it. His glass paused at his lips. Something in her voice felt like a bruise beneath silk. Over the next few weeks, Lucas escalated. He began taking her phone during random security updates. He rescheduled her public speaking engagements under false pretenses. When she confronted him, he shrugged. "I'm just looking out for your reputation. It reflects on me too." "No," she replied softly. "You're looking for ways to erase mine." But every move he made seemed to strengthen her. She was like iron under fire, hot. Yes, furious, sometimes, but never melting. Even the staff noticed. "Ma'am, would you like this sent to your office or your husband's?" A housekeeper asked one afternoon. Khloe smiled politely. "Just because I live in his house doesn't mean I've lost my name." Lucas didn't know why her words stuck. He found himself awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, wondering how someone could live beside him, untouched by everything he offered or withheld. This wasn't marriage. This was a siege. One night, the tension snapped. Khloe found her presentation notes in the trash. She said nothing for hours, but when Lucas passed her in the hall, she stopped him. "Was it you?" He didn't answer. She stepped closer, not angry, not shaking, just steel. "You think you're teaching me a lesson?" "Lucas, but what you're really doing is revealing how small you are when your power isn't working." He didn't respond. She didn't wait. Later that week, she stayed out late at a fundraiser. Lucas sat alone in the living room, the untouched wine growing warm in crystal glasses. When the door finally opened, she stepped inside with wind in her hair and purpose in her step. "You could have called," he said tightly. She set her bag down and met his eyes. "I don't owe you explanations. You married me for a bet. Remember, not because you wanted to understand who I am." He hated that she said it so calmly, like it was a fact, not a wound. In the days that followed, Lucas tried a new tactic: guilt. He left flowers on her nightstand, cooked dinner, sat silently at breakfast. She didn't reject the gestures. She just didn't react. One morning, she found him sitting on the balcony. The sun hadn't risen yet. The sky was still charcoal. "Why are you out here?" she asked, startled by the vulnerability in his silence. He didn't look at her. "Because I'm tired of playing a game I can't win." For the first time, her posture softened. "Then stop playing," she said gently. "I never asked you to fight me. I only asked you to let me be." That night, Lucas sat at his desk, staring at the bet contract. 6 months, $1 million, a game. He thought about tearing it in half, but it wasn't the paper that bound him now. It was the fact that the woman sleeping down the hall, who he couldn't buy, intimidate, or control, was slowly becoming the only person he couldn't forget. She wouldn't bend. And somehow, Lucas was starting to wonder if she was the one saving him, not the other way around. Chapter 4. The Mirror Cracks. It started with silence, not the cold kind, but something more dangerous: the stillness that comes before a storm. Lucas noticed it first in the mornings. Khloe wasn't just distant. Now she was somewhere else entirely. She made coffee without looking up. She passed him in the hallway without meeting his eyes. She wasn't angry. She was done pretending. And for the first time, Lucas wasn't sure what she was done with. He tried to provoke her, just to get a reaction. "You're looking tired," he commented over breakfast, eyes scanning her face. Khloe sipped her coffee. "That's what grief does to you." Lucas blinked. "Grief?" She looked up slowly, finally meeting his eyes. "It never goes away. It just becomes a room you learn to live in." That night, she came home later than usual. He waited for her in the living room. Lights dimmed, city lights flickering through the glass walls like distant stars. "Where were you?" He asked without looking at her. Not yours to ask, she replied, setting down her bag. He stood. Do you enjoy this? Making me feel like a stranger in my own house. Khloe turned, slowly. No, Lucas, I don't enjoy it. But maybe now, you know what it feels like to live where everything is beautiful, but nothing is kind. The words stung more than he let on. She disappeared into the guest room, closing the door with a softness that felt like thunder. Lucas stood alone in the quiet, his fists clenched, his chest tight. He didn't understand why this woman, who was supposed to be a pawn in a ridiculous game, was slowly peeling back the parts of him no one had ever touched. And the scariest part, he wasn't sure he wanted her to stop. The next morning, he followed her to the balcony. The city below was beginning to stir, but the sky was still the color of bruises. Why did you say that last night? He asked. She didn't turn around. You know exactly why. He stepped closer. No, I don't understand you. Khloe, finally. She turned eyes, glinting not with anger, but clarity. That's because you've never had to understand anyone. You've built your entire life on being unreachable, and now you're angry that someone won't come begging to be let in. Lucas flinched. You think I don't feel things? I think you've forgotten how... He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came. Khloe walked past him, brushing against his arm for just a second. It wasn't intentional, but it burned. Later that day, Lucas stood in front of the mirror in his dressing room. Custom-tailored suit, Rolex, perfect stubble, the kind of man the world listened to. But for the first time, he didn't like what he saw. Beneath the precision was a hollowness, a man who took women for games, a man who signed contracts with people he never looked in the eye, a man who didn't remember the names of the companies he crushed or the families behind them. The mirror cracked, not literally, but in his mind. He saw himself not as the winner, but as the villain. And the woman down the hall, she was the first one who had ever dared to show him the truth. That evening, Lucas knocked on her door. She didn't answer right away. When she finally opened it, her expression was calm but not cold. What do you want? He swallowed. To know who you really are. Too late, she replied. You never asked when it mattered. She started to close the door, but he stepped forward. Not with force, just desperation. I'm starting to remember things, he said quietly. Deals I made. People I ruined. You said grief doesn't go away. Neither does guilt. Does it? Her fingers tightened on the doorknob. No, she whispered. It doesn't. And then she closed the door. Lucas leaned his forehead against the wood, heart racing, shame thick in his throat. She hadn't yelled. She hadn't punished. She had simply told the truth. And for a man like him, that was the cruelest mercy of all. He thought breaking her would prove his strength. But now he realized the real mirror cracking was him. Chapter 5. The Real Reason. Lucas didn't sleep that night. He lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, counting shadows. Every word Khloe had said echoed like a voice in a long, empty hall. You never asked when it mattered. Guilt doesn't go away. He didn't know if he hated her for saying it or hated himself for knowing she was right. By morning, something in him shifted. Not dramatically, not all at once, but like the slow give of ice just before it cracks. He began to pay attention, not just to Khloe, but to the silences between her words, the things she didn't say, the way she always stood, a little too still when he mentioned contracts, the way her eyes darkened when his phone buzzed with business calls. He remembered something else, to her last name, Richards. It buzzed like a faint alarm in the back of his mind. That evening, she was in the study, not reading, just staring out the window. The sky bruised in shades of lavender and smoke. Lucas leaned against the doorway, unsure if he was welcome. You okay? he asked carefully. She nodded once, but didn't speak. Khloe, she turned slightly, just enough for him to see the tension in her shoulders. I need to ask you something, he said, and I need you to answer me honestly. Silence. He took a step closer. Why did you really agree to this marriage? What do you really want from me? She turned then slow, deliberate, and the look on her face stopped him cold. You think I married you for the money? She said softly. Or the lifestyle? You really don't know anything at all. Do you? I'm trying to, he said. Then remember this, she replied. The name Richards. You've heard it before. Lucas felt a chill crawl across his spine. Richards, the company, the small environmental firm. Her jaw tightened. My father's company, she whispered. The one you crushed with a merger you never even showed up to negotiate. The one you absorbed and liquidated to cut costs and boost quarterly earnings. Lucas went still. She wasn't just a challenge. She was a reckoning. My father worked 30 years to build something honest, she said. Her voice trembled not from weakness, but from weight. He hired single mothers. He gave second chances, and you erased it in a single board meeting. He opened his mouth. No words came. He didn't survive it, she said, her voice breaking. He lost everything, his dignity, his name, and 6 weeks after your press release, he took his own life. Lucas stepped back like he'd been slapped. Khloe didn't cry. Her eyes were wet, but unwavering. I knew what this marriage was, she said, but what you didn't know was that from the very beginning, I planned to make you feel exactly what you made my family feel. You used me. Lucas whispered, stunned. No, she said. I gave you a chance to feel, to wake up, and maybe redeem something inside yourself before it's too late. He felt like he couldn't breathe. I don't want your money, she added. I never did. Then what do you want? He asked, his voice hoarse. She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, he saw not hatred, but sorrow. I wanted you to understand the cost of what you've done, not with spreadsheets, but with a broken heart. She walked past him. He didn't stop her, and when the door closed behind her, Lucas collapsed into the chair beside him, hands shaking. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of everything he'd never asked, never cared to know, never realized he had destroyed. And Khloe, she wasn't his wife. She was the consequence of his past. For the first time, Lucas understood. She hadn't come to break him. She came to make sure he finally saw what he'd already broken. Chapter 6. The Funeral You Never Attended. It rained the next morning, not the dramatic kind. No thunder, no lightning, just a soft, endless drizzle. Like the sky was too tired to cry loudly. Lucas stood at the window, untouched coffee cooling in his hand. The penthouse felt colder, emptier, like her truth had seeped into the walls. Khloe didn't come out of her room, and for the first time in his adult life, Lucas didn't know what move to make next. He spent the day researching things he should have known years ago. Richards Environmental, a small firm in Vermont, sustainable, family-run, nearly debt-free until it wasn't. He found the acquisition papers, his initials in black ink, a line in the executive summary, projected 37% profit increase through liquidation of acquired assets. Assets, that's what they'd called it. Not people, not dreams, just numbers on a spreadsheet. The last article he found was a local obituary. Walter James Richards, beloved husband, father, founder, gone by suicide, survived by his daughter, Khloe. Lucas shut the laptop and leaned forward, head in his hands. He hadn't just crushed a company, he had crushed a man. And in doing so, he'd carved a wound into the woman who now lived across the hall. That night, he stood outside Khloe's door with a heaviness in his chest that felt like penance. He knocked once. She opened it. Slowly, arms crossed over a cardigan. She looked smaller tonight, not weak, but tired in a way that reached down into the bones. "I read everything," he said softly. She didn't ask what. He continued. "I saw the press releases, the court filings, the obituary." Her face didn't change, just her eyes. "I didn't know." He said, "You didn't care to." She replied gently, "That's the part that still hurts." He swallowed. "I know I can't undo what I did to your father, or to you." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she opened the door wider. "Come in." They sat on opposite ends of the couch, a quilt between them like a shared truce. Khloe began to speak, not with anger, but with memory. "He was a good man," she said. "Quiet. The kind who fixed broken door hinges without being asked. Who never missed one of my school plays. Who believed in second chances, even when the world didn't." Lucas listened, silent. He thought he could keep the company afloat. "Even when your firm sent threats, even when the banks called in the debts you created with inflated valuations." He kept trying until her voice broke. She blinked fast and looked away. "He left a note," she whispered. Lucas's chest constricted. "He said he was sorry he couldn't save us, that he hoped I'd understand one day, and that if I ever saw your name again, I should forgive you, because holding on to hate would only kill me." Too. Lucas's throat closed. "But I didn't forgive you," she said, tears finally spilling. "Not then. And when Jack made that bet, I saw my chance. Not to destroy you, but to show you what destruction really looks like." She paused, then added, "And maybe to make peace with my own grief." Lucas didn't speak. He couldn't. "What do you say to the daughter of a man you erased? What do you say when you realize you never deserved the forgiveness you're begging for?" He reached across the quilt slowly, not to touch her, but to offer presence. She didn't pull away. The room stayed quiet for a long time, not tense, not broken, just full. Of memory, of mourning, of something that might one day become healing. When Khloe finally stood to go, she didn't close the door all the way behind her. Lucas sat alone in the hush that followed, the rain tapping against the windows like a quiet funeral procession. He had missed the real one, but maybe this was its echo. He hadn't attended Walter Richards' funeral, but tonight, Lucas buried the man he used to be and prayed that something better might take root in the wreckage. Chapter 7. The baby that was never born. The days that followed were still, not peaceful, not healed, just still. Lucas found himself moving through the penthouse like a man walking through a church after everyone had gone. The silence wasn't empty. It was sacred, careful, as if one wrong word could shatter it all. Khloe didn't avoid him anymore, but she didn't reach for him either. And somehow, that made his guilt ache even deeper. One night, the rain returned soft, steady, the kind that made windows blur and hearts ache. Khloe was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, her knees tucked beneath her. A candle flickered nearby. She was reading something, but not really. Lucas approached quietly. Holding 2 mugs of tea, he offered one. She took it. No words. They sat like that for a while. 2 people who had once been enemies, now sharing the same breath. "I want to ask something," he said, his voice soft, uncertain. Khloe didn't look at him, but she didn't shut him out. "Anything," she said. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "About your father." She exhaled slowly, fingers tightening around the warm mug. "Because I didn't want to give you that power. I needed to watch you unravel first. I needed you to feel what it's like, to live with something you can't fix." Lucas nodded. It made sense. Pain has its own schedule. But she wasn't done. Her eyes stayed fixed on the candle's flickering flame when she spoke again. "There's something else you don't know." Lucas turned to her. "What is it?" She paused, as if preparing herself for her own words. And then, with a voice barely above a whisper, I was pregnant. The world stopped. Lucas blinked, unsure if he heard her right. What? She nodded slowly, eyes glistening now. After the collapse, after the funeral, I didn't even know I was pregnant until I lost it. She didn't sob. She didn't collapse. But the quiet in her voice was louder than any scream could have been. It was the stress, the grief. The hospital said it just happened. But I knew my body was holding too much sorrow, and it let go of the only soft thing I had left. Lucas couldn't breathe. All the boardrooms, all the wins, all the victories, none of it prepared him for this moment. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked. Khloe, She looked at him now, eyes steady. You didn't know. But that doesn't change the fact that your choices took everything from me. Lucas felt like the walls were closing in. He stood, pacing the room like a man drowning. I would have done something, God. I didn't know Khloe. I swear, if I could take it back. You can't, she said softly. That's the point. He turned to her, desperate. I've destroyed so many things in my life and never once felt it. But this is different. This is you, and it's unbearable. She nodded, not cruelly, just truthfully. Then sit with it. Let it break you, because only when something breaks can it finally be rebuilt. He dropped to the floor in front of her, not out of performance, but because his knees couldn't hold the weight anymore. And for the first time, he wept, not like a CEO, not like a man trying to win a bet, but like someone who finally understood what it meant to lose something you never even knew you needed. Khloe didn't comfort him, not right away. She sat quietly, tears slipping down her own cheeks. Not for him, for her, for the baby, for the father, for the girl she used to be. After a while, she reached out just one hand on his shoulder, and somehow, that small touch felt like forgiveness hadn't arrived, but had opened the door. Some truths don't break people apart, they break them open. And that night, Lucas didn't just lose the bet. He lost the man he'd been and finally made room for someone new to be born. Chapter 8. Guilt is a quiet voice. The next morning, the penthouse was quiet. Lucas stood in the kitchen, hands shaking as he stirred a pot of oatmeal. He didn't know if Khloe even liked oatmeal. He only knew she hadn't eaten dinner the night before. It was the first time in years he'd made something for someone without expecting anything back. He left the bowl on the table, no note, no flourish, just warmth. When Khloe walked into the kitchen later, she paused. Her eyes drifted over the quiet offering. She didn't say anything, but she sat down. Lucas, from the other room, heard the soft sound of a spoon against porcelain, and he exhaled. Guilt had become a companion now. Not loud, not punishing, just constant. It followed him into the shower, stood with him in the elevator, whispered in his ear when he walked into his office and saw the logo of the empire he'd built over the bones of people like Khloe's father. He didn't feel proud anymore. He felt ashamed. He began showing up differently. No more sharp remarks. No more control games. No more carefully orchestrated silence. Instead, he offered small things. Hot tea left near her favorite chair. Her umbrella placed by the door when it rained. He didn't hover. He didn't explain. He just made space. Some nights, they sat on the balcony, not speaking, just listening to the hum of the city. One night, Khloe broke the silence. You know, I don't forgive you yet. I know, Lucas said. I don't forgive myself either. That was the night she let him sit closer, not touching, not pretending, just closer. He began researching the families impacted by his decisions. Quietly, carefully, names from past reports, companies marked as non-performing assets on quarterly spreadsheets. Now, he saw them for what they were. People, dreams, lives derailed. He started writing letters. Some got mailed, most didn't, but writing them helped. Each one was a confession. Back at home, Khloe had begun softening too, but like winter easing into spring. She still moved cautiously, but her voice didn't carry that edge anymore. Her gaze no longer flinched when it met his. She let him make her tea in the evenings. She let him fold her laundry without protest. She even let him sit beside her while she read. These were victories not because they meant she was falling for him, but because she no longer needed to fight. One rainy afternoon, he passed by her office and saw her asleep on the couch, book folded over her chest, hair falling over her eyes. Something caught in his throat. She wasn't the woman he met at the restaurant that first night. She was something deeper, raw, changed, wounded, but whole. And he wasn't the man who made that bed anymore. He was just a man learning how to live with the silence he created. That evening, he asked softly, "Can I take you somewhere tomorrow?" Khloe looked up from her book. "Where? You'll see," he said. She paused, then nodded. "All right." The next day, he took her to a small community center on the edge of Brooklyn. It was humble, faded signs, cracked pavement, but inside, there was a room with 10 volunteers working on small business grants for single mothers and laid-off workers. Khloe turned to him, confused. "I'm funding it," he said quietly. "In your father's name." She stared at him, stunned. "I don't want credit," Lucas added. "Just to start somewhere." Khloe blinked fast. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. Her eyes filled. But this time, it wasn't grief. It was something gentler. They drove home in silence, the good kind. That night, she placed a hand on his arm before she left the kitchen. He didn't move, but inside, something broke, not from pain, from the beginning of grace. Guilt doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, and if you're quiet enough to hear it, it might just become the start of something good. Chapter 9. When forgiveness hangs in the air. Forgiveness didn't come with trumpets. It didn't arrive in a grand scene or a dramatic confession. It came one soft moment at a time. And in Lucas's case, it came quietly, like spring thawing frost, while no one was looking. Khloe had stopped avoiding him. She spoke gently now, with pauses that invited him to respond. She didn't smile often, but when she did, just barely, it felt like sunlight coming through a crack in a locked room. They developed a kind of rhythm. He made her tea. She read while he cooked. They passed one another without tension. And once, just once, she laughed at something he said. It happened on a Tuesday. He had burned the toast badly, and the alarm screeched as he fanned the air with a kitchen towel. "CEO, nearly taken down by a slice of sourdough," Khloe said from the doorway, her eyes glinting. Lucas looked over, stunned. "Did you just make a joke?" She shrugged. "Don't get used to it." But the corner of her mouth curled, and that more than any kiss, more than any apology, nearly broke him, because it meant she was still capable of light, and she was letting him see it. That evening, they sat together on the couch, a respectful distance between them. The room was dim, golden with lamplight. The city whispered outside. Lucas looked at her, the words rising before he could stop them. "Do you think forgiveness is possible?" Khloe didn't answer right away. She looked out the window, eyes searching something far beyond the skyline. "It's not about possible," she said. "It's about earned. It's not something I give. It's something you grow into." He nodded, heart heavy with humility. "I don't know if I can ever make it right." "You can't," she said gently. "Some things will never be right. But that doesn't mean you stop trying to live better than you were when you broke them." Lucas looked down at his hands, scarless hands, hands that had signed too many cold contracts. "I want to be that man," he whispered. Chloe's voice softened. "Then don't say it to me." He looked up. She continued, "Say it to yourself. Every morning you wake up. Every night you look in the mirror. Say it to the child I lost, to the man who raised me, and to the boy inside you." who never learned how to love without conquering. The silence that followed was thick, full of ache and something else possibility. Lucas reached over and, for the first time, took her hand. She didn't pull away. She didn't squeeze back either. But she let it stay. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat on the floor outside her door, blanket over his shoulders, knees tucked into his chest. He wasn't waiting for anything. He just didn't want her to feel alone. In the morning, she opened the door. Her eyes widened when she saw him there. "You stayed." He stood slowly, stiff but calm. "I just didn't want to go too far." She watched him, then stepped aside. "Come in." They didn't touch. They didn't kiss. They just lay side by side on the bed, fully clothed, looking at the ceiling. And somehow, that closeness meant more than anything else ever could. Forgiveness didn't arrive with a bang. It came like breath, quiet, shaky, but finally shared. Chapter 10. The real wedding. The 6th month came. No countdown, no clock ticking, just a quiet morning, where Khloe stood in the doorway of Lucas's study and said, "It's today." He didn't ask what's today. He knew. Their contract ended. She walked in slowly, barefoot, holding a folded piece of paper. "I wrote this last night," she said. "It's not a letter, just something I needed to say." Lucas stood, his throat tightening. Khloe placed the paper on his desk and looked up at him. "6 months ago, I walked into your life with a plan. I wanted you to feel what my father felt powerless. I thought revenge would heal me, but instead, you did." He couldn't speak. "Not yet. I didn't fall in love with the man who made the bet," she continued. "I fell in love with the one who stayed after the truth shattered him, the one who brought me tea without asking, who apologized without expecting forgiveness, who sat outside my door just to let me sleep." She stepped closer. "I don't want a contract anymore. I want a choice. So today, Lucas, I choose you." Lucas didn't cry, but something inside him bowed. He reached for her hand, kissed the back of it, and whispered, "Then let's do it right this time." The second wedding was nothing like the first. No courthouse, no marble, no photographers, no one to impress. Just a small rooftop garden in Brooklyn, strings of warm lights, and a handful of souls who mattered. Khloe wore soft ivory and her hair in waves. No veil, no shame. Lucas wore navy. No armor. They stood beneath a wooden arch, draped in simple fabric. The city skyline behind them like a silent witness. The officiant kept it short, but when it was time to say vows, Lucas reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded napkin. He unfolded it slowly, his voice catching. "I wrote this the day you told me about the baby, but I couldn't read it then. I wasn't ready. I am now." Khloe's eyes shimmered. Lucas cleared his throat and began, "I used to think love was something you won, a prize, a conquest. Then I met a woman who refused to be conquered, who looked at my empire and saw a man crumbling inside it. And instead of walking away, she taught me how to rebuild from the inside out. Khloe Richards, I don't vow to protect you, because you never needed protection. I vow to honor you, to listen when you're silent, to stay when it's hard, to make tea and fold laundry, and sit outside your door if I have to. And if life ever hands us pain again, I vow to hold your hand through the ache, not because I have to, but because I want to." Khloe didn't speak right away. She just stepped forward, cupped his face in her hands, and whispered, "I forgive you, not because you asked for it, but because you became someone who deserved it." Then she kissed him soft, slow, reverent. The guests clapped, but neither of them heard it. That night, they danced under fairy lights, no choreography, just swaying, arms wrapped around each other, forehead to forehead. She laughed when he stepped on her foot. He kissed her nose in apology. Later, they lay in bed, the kind of silence between them that felt full, not empty. Lucas stroked her hair, Khloe rested her head on his chest, and then she said it quietly, like a secret blooming between them. "I'm late." He looked down, breath caught. "Late." She nodded and smiled. This time, it wouldn't be a contract, or a game, or revenge. This time, it would be a family, and the real wedding was only the beginning. Shirin, some stories don't begin with love. They begin with anger, or silence, or a $1,000,000 bet made by a man who thought hearts were currency. But love, real love, it doesn't bloom under perfect skies. It rises in the wreckage. Lucas Marshall was a man who built empires with iron fists and golden lies, until the woman he married as a joke made him confront the truth he spent years burying beneath power and profit. Khloe Richards wasn't his downfall. She was his resurrection. They buried old ghosts together. The father lost, the baby never born. The versions of themselves they had to outgrow. And in their place, something softer grew. Forgiveness, trust, a future. Their story didn't end at the altar. It began there, not as strangers, not as opponents, but as survivors of grief, of guilt, of themselves. Some people marry for status, some for games, but the lucky ones, they marry the person who broke them, because only that person knows how to build them back. What did you think of this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Rate it from 0 to 10. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story. And stay tuned. More powerful stories are waiting for you right here. If this story touched something in you, stay a while, because the next one, it goes even deeper. Subscribe if your heart needs healing. Share it with someone who still believes in second chances. And remember, love doesn't always arrive gently, but when it's real, it stays.